Welcome back to Projects Everywhere. Yep, we at the whiteboard again. And you like my little drawing, don't you? This is going to be about timber frame joints. I'm doing a greenhouse here as practice before I do my bunkhouse. And before I do the greenhouse, I'm doing some joints on 4x4s. Alright, y'all. I've already done a couple of basic joints, which is basically a mortise and a tenon. The tenon on a joint, you have a timber that comes up like this, and it's got this piece on the end of it. That's going to be your tenon. Your mortise, you've got a piece here and a notch cut in the middle of it. That's your mortise. This right here is my very first timber frame joint, which these are 4x4s, which like I said, they're 3.5 by 3.5. I cut a 1-inch tenon at the end of the 4x4, and I cut a 1-inch mortise directly in the center of the 4x4, and I'm just using dowels, just regular old wooden dowels to hold them together right now. You have a housing. This little recess right here is called a housing. I cut a very small housing in it because it's just 4x4s, and you would not believe how sturdy this joint is. The second joint that I did was a brace. Your brace, you're going to have pieces that go this way and this way. Now when you cut these, you actually cut a tenon that comes up into this piece here and into this piece here on both sides. But I did one side. I did one side of this, and I'll show that to you now. So basically, this is the 2 foot by 2 foot section. This is your basically the same kind that I did on the front, and then I've got my tenon coming up in here and down here, right there, which it worked out pretty good. And this is just as sturdy as the first one. I'm gonna start doing my next practice joint. Well, the next practice joint I'm gonna do is a corner joint, which is basically, I'm going to have, this is going to be the floor, and then there's my floor joist. Well, the practice, and then you got your wall posts that come up like this. The practice joint I'm doing today is going to be this joint right here, which I'm going to have But that's basically what I'm going to do today. Alright, y'all, I got my 3 pieces cut. And since this is basically practice day, these pieces of 4x4 have been out in the yard probably for at least probably 4 years. They've gotten wet and dried, and wet and dried. They've been painted. They're just old. So if I screw them up, I hadn't lost anything. But what we're going to do, we're going to get these 2 boards, and we're going to do a corner joint right there. And we're going to have this one. We're going to have that one right there. These 2 pieces will have tenons. And this piece will have 2 mortises. Well, y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna get busy doing this. Alright, y'all, basically what I was doing, I was squaring these ends up. When you do this, man, it's got a lot of knots out. When you're doing these measurements, these ends need to be as square as possible. When we start using the big timbers, I'm going to have to find a reference face and adjacent face, and that's what you make all your measurements from, is your reference face and adjacent face. Compared to those first two joints, this is a much more complicated joint, but y'all hang in there with me. We'll see what we can do. Some of the mortises are really close to the end, and tear out's going to be an issue, but one thing you can definitely realize, if we can get the skills to do these small 4x4s, the big 10x10s and the 8x8s are going to be a breeze. So that's basically why I'm practicing on this small stuff. And the stuff's been sitting out here forever. Your chisels have to be really sharp to cut through this, and they're kind of like sponges. But we're gonna see what we can do. Just hang in there, see what happens. So on this piece right here, this is the corner post that's gonna go up and down on top of the corner. We need a tenon on the bottom of here to go into the corner. Alright, y'all see how I made those cuts? I made those cuts right before the line. You want to use your chisel to get that off, and I started right on the line, and that shows you how off my saw is. So whenever y'all get ready to make your cuts, make sure your saw is square. My saw, I think the bottom of it is actually bent, it's so old, but I can use a chisel to take that little bit out. Y'all, there is a misconception about using chisels. I used to think all my life, man, when I look at a chisel, I'd be like, I don't want to use that stuff. That's too much work. But since I've been using them, it's not that hard. It's really easy. As long as you got a sharp chisel, you could go right through this wood no problem. You don't even need the mallet most of the times if you've got your chisel sharp enough. So and there's our first tenon. It's gonna sit down in that corner. See how that is? As y'all can see, if you get your chisel sharp enough, you can slice right through that wood, even this spongy stuff. I'm tapering this off because it's going to be going in that corner slot. Just like that. These drill bits I'm using, they're called Forstner bits. They take out a lot of wood and leave a flat bottom. Alright, y'all. I got the mortises cut. Man, this wood sucks. But this is one thing you got to look out for. You see, I cut a mortise right here. And since it's so close to the edge and this sucky wood, if you look close, you can see there is a crack right through there. But you got to think too, there's a knot. There's the heart right there. And it was already checking here and here. This stuff is just like a sponge. It don't really cut through it, no matter how sharp I got my chisel. It's just pulling. And instead of cutting it, it just pulls hunks out of it. I got it to where it'll go together, and I'm getting ready to drill the holes and put the pegs in it. I know it's cracked, but this is my first corner piece, so I'm putting it together, and I'm gonna keep it. Like I said, this is all just practice. And there's my first corner joint. Good practice. We'll see y'all on the next one.